Hi, everyone. So is it okay to, we'll start? It's good to see all these great faces. And again, I just want to thank Christine, Madeline, and John, and Sabrina for coming. And we'll just launch right in because you have a good idea of who they are. Christine, I just thought maybe we'd start with you. Your work has been published in the New York Times, Newsday, and so many other highly competitive outlets. So I just wanted to ask, what steps in particular did you take early in your career that you think attributed to your success in journalism?
Sure, sure. I think a lot of it has to do with being available, being flexible, and creating your own opportunities. When I was 16 years old, actually 15, I started writing for the town newspaper about unsung town heroes. It was a column that I pitched to the editor. She liked that I was a teenager. And I just kind of asked adults who the movers and shakers were in my neighborhood. And then went over with my little, recorder and transcribed every single word. Because even at the young age of 15, I realized that accuracy was the most important thing to writing news. So I would say that was a big key to my success. I still transcribe interviews when they're important and when I have the time. And the other thing is being available to other people to kind of carve out other opportunities like Cebu. I was a check-in girl for the Society of Business Editors and Writers. And from that opportunity, I met editors that I had never thought that I would meet and wound up with a column. And, it just kind of, I rented a talk show studio to create my own talk show during the economic downturn 10 years ago, and really kind of asked headhunters how people could find jobs, how they can present themselves, because I knew jobs were on everybody's mind, including mine. And as a freelancer, I just had the time to really kind of flex my wings and get extra experience that I didn't have.
Great. Actually, you mentioned transcribing your interviews. Often I've heard reporters talk about, mention that they don't take notes during interviews. They just put it on their tape recorder. And I've always found that when I interview, the act of transcribing helps build the story and helps me find gaps. I become closer to the information. And do you find that happens with you when you're in the transcribing process?
Absolutely. And I would also say, try to get your clips into major media, New York Times, US News and World Report. Recognize that the media outlet and the circulation is very, very important to your career, especially if you post on LinkedIn when you get that clip. So let's say you get your first shot. You actually have the miracle of talking to a New York Times editor and she accepts your pitch. Now you've got to really prove your stuff. And so you might work for 2 months on a story. You're taking notes and transcribing your interviews so that you can map a trend in a very real way, or you can get that information that no one else has. Right? If you write a story that people can use their common sense about, it's not really a story. You want to get that nugget of individual information from your sources. And sometimes what you think is funny or silly while you're interviewing the source is actually that nugget of information that's new and fresh. And you'll realize that when you transcribe your recording.
Right. Yes. Right. Yeah. I mean, you have to be, I guess before you sit down and write, you have to know your facts and your notes without having to look at them. It helps to get close to it in that way.
Well, the funny thing is, I always figure my readers are bored and I have to catch their attention. So what I might do is compile all of my interviews into one massive file and wait till I am tired and then go through, read the entire file and highlight in a different color the stuff that's interesting to me when I'm exhausted.
Huh, interesting. That's a good idea. And so, John, what about you? What, television producing too is also quite a competitive field. What steps do you think helped, that you took early on in your career, that you think helped position yourself to end up at CBS New York?
I would say pretty much what Christine said as well, finding your own opportunities. I started actually in high school with a radio, so I never even wanted to really necessarily go to broadcast and be on television. I wanted to do print or radio. And I went to Albany clearly, and that's when I started to kind of fall more in love with broadcast news and going in front of the camera. That's what happened actually at, I think I was dual major in journalism and communication. So I think it was the Communication Honor Society. They're having an internship fair, and I got an internship at ABC up in Albany, and I was producing for them, and I was a web producer, and I interned, turned producer, and I just took any job I can get. Just getting your feet through the door, making your own opportunities, and just the entire time just being curious and just not saying no. Honestly, any single thing they asked me to do, I would do, and I'd smile and I'd do it. Go out with the cameraman, I was an intern going out with the cameraman, getting interviews for reporters, and that's what I was doing while also still going to school. And then I started producing. I didn't know how to really produce, but they trained me to produce. And so you just are always saying yes to everything, kind of, and just seeing everything as opportunity and how you can kind of build on that. And then from there, just kind of flourishes. It's kind of cliche, but it's so true. Often or not, it's also about like who you know, and you clearly have to know your stuff, but it's also who you know. And I didn't know anyone. I literally, my father was in construction. My mom's a teacher. I'm from Long Island. Didn't know a single person. So I had to get out there and started networking and figuring out who to talk to and how to, get from point A to point B in my career. And it's just that you do that in the newsroom. And now I'm the morning reporter at CBS. My producer, so one of my bosses, he's going to be executive producer soon, was one of the producers when I was an intern in Albany. And so he, of course, remembered me. And so him and I already have a good relationship. So that's another thing that I always tell everyone is never burn any bridges, because he remembered how hard I worked as an intern in Albany at the ABC affiliate up there. And now we're both in New York, and he and I get along so well because we have this relationship already.
Right. Yes. I mean, that's so true too. Just never make enemies.
Yeah.
And leave a job in good stead, and say thank you and move on.
Yeah. And again, opportunities. It's just, you take,
right.
We all, whatever we want to do right out of college, we expect to just be making a lot of money and if we want to be on TV, being on TV in this market we want to be on. It doesn't work that way at all. You just got to kind of work the way up the ladder and just try your hardest,
right.
Especially in this industry. Most industries, that's the case, but especially journalism industry.
And which sort of like leads me to you, Madeline. I mean, you went from, I remember you went from school, you're the managing editor of the Albany Student Press, and then you got your job at Maine, at the newspaper in Maine, right? That was the...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was my first job out of college.
Yeah, and I remember having conversations with you at the time. I always often feel that people tend to overlook the local news as a place to work. It seems, but what was your experience working for a local newspaper?
Yeah, so I worked for the newspaper there, and I also worked for a local newspaper in Colorado. And I'd say I don't regret the experiences. I definitely learned a lot in Maine because I was covering a little bit of everything. We had geographic beats, so I was covering, the school board meetings, the city budget meetings, crime, everything. So it was a great way to learn. In Maine, it didn't matter so much, but definitely, obviously, the pay is less in local news. And there's, most local news is owned by big conglomerates now, but in Maine, it wasn't very bad compared to like what some of my friends did as their first jobs out of college. I actually was pretty lucky. And also was a great way to, you know, a lot of my colleagues there had been there like 20 years or so. So it was a good way to sort of learn from the people around me who had a lot of experience. But yeah, overall, I did enjoy my time in Maine looking back on it now.
Well, there's been a lot of studies lately about just how important our local newspapers are to democracy in towns where there are no local papers. It tends to be more expensive. There's less diversity. There's more corruption. So I was wondering, you know, in your work, did you are there any examples that you might remember while you were working on the paper that where you saw that you were having a direct impact on the lives of the people you were covering?
Let me think a little bit. I know we did cover, I mean, pretty much almost everything I was covering there was important in some way because, you know, I was covering school board meetings and there's a lot of money for the town up in the air, you know, covering the town meetings and, you know, New England's like democratic form of government. It's very unique and interesting. But you know, just getting the information to people so that they can make decisions or push their, you know, their city council people or whoever to make decisions. There was, I think this was toward maybe the middle or end of when I was there was a lot of like lead outbreak in some public schools. So that was a big deal and we reported on that like pretty aggressively. And I don't know that like the water company would have done anything bad had we not been covering it aggressively, but I think that definitely made sure, you know, if there hadn't been a paper, like almost no one would have known because people weren't really made aware of it through any other way. So that was an instance I can think of where it was very clear that like everyone wanted to know what we were writing about.
Well, you also make a good point. I mean, your job often as well on the local paper is just your presence at the meeting makes people do their job better, you know, and to be more honest, right? That's also our important role.
There has been times where I've been at public meetings before and people didn't realize I was a reporter. And like one of the other council members who knew me and this was a new person, like that person would be saying something they shouldn't be. And the council member would be like, I think we need to redirect here and like look at me and be like, we have press here.
That's fun. I mean, I would think, it must be quite fun actually working in a town and in a local geographic coverage where you get to know people quite well.
Yeah, it was, that is probably what I missed the most from moving from local to a national outlet, was actually knowing the people I was covering and building relationships with the people who worked for the towns or who lived in them.
Right. And actually, so Sabrina, you know, there's so many, it's hard for me to find people on Zoom. Sabrina, where are you?
I'm here. Hello.
Oh, there you are. Okay, you're in my upper right-hand corner. Sorry. So you took quite a different route. I can't remember. Were you a journalism you were a journalism major at the time when you were at Albany?
I was. I was a journalism major. I didn't start school intending to go into journalism, but I took one course my freshman year with Holly McKenna actually. And I really enjoyed it. It was like my first kind of exposure into journalism at all because I didn't have any type of high school courses that related to this. I didn't have a high school paper even. But it caught my interest quickly and I decided to make it my major by the time of my the start of my sophomore year. But yeah, I did not go into traditional journalism.
And what was there something about journalism that made you think it wasn't for you?
You know, I mean, I stuck with journalism as my major for the rest of my 4 years because it was something that I liked. Like I said, it really did interest me, but you know, I thought very hard about where I saw myself, you know, post-graduation, 5 years forward, things like that. And for a while, I really did want to go into broadcast. I wanted to be a reporter. And I'm not really sure at what point that changed, but truthfully, like, I think that I am still able to use my journalism skills well in my current career. So the job that I'm at now is the position that I was offered straight out of school. I interned at a company called Relentless Awareness, which is a firm in downtown Albany that does communications, public relations, marketing, advertising, a whole like slew of things. But um, it was my first experience with anything related to that as well. And so I realized that my journalism degree was still pretty useful from the PR perspective, which is the work that I was heavier in when I had first started. Because I thought that, you know, if we have clients that we are trying to help promote, get any type of message across, we know as journalism students, at least, we know what journalists are looking for in a story. And so whenever we are trying to kind of package something together for our clients, we are able to package it directly as what journalists are looking for. So if we need, a grand opening or any type of big announcement to be made known in our community, like I said, we package it the right way. All of that information can get sent to the journalists. We know exactly what they are looking for. And so having that experience on the other side of the lens has proven to be pretty helpful in public relations.
Right. Do you have any examples of projects that were among your favorites or that were particularly challenging in which you drew on your journalism skills?
That's a good question. Well, I have been working with like a wide variety of clients around Albany and just the capital region in general. Some of our clients are like the Department of Tourism and Conventions, which is called Discover Albany. It is a department that is like an extension of the city. And so they do various programs that are not only geared towards like bringing in tourism to the city, but also just kind of, especially with COVID now, and obviously most places are not a destination without people traveling. So we've been gearing a lot of our materials towards local tourism. So helping people who are Albany residents, Capital Region residents, to rediscover places that they may not have known about in the area. And so a lot of our projects have been, trying to reach out to the audience that is already here. But like Christine had said, like how do you grab their attention with things that they're kind of potentially not paying attention to, things that may seem boring because it is their regular old town, a regular community. So really just finding like the specific pitching points that can really make a not only make a story interesting, but just I don't know how to word my thoughts right now.
Sort of how to make a story interesting. I mean, that's what we all have to do. We can't be boring. I mean, if we're insufferably dull, no one will read us. That's not acceptable.
This is true.
In journalism or in public relations. So I think, I think obviously those are, very two strong similarities where the skills do come in handy. So, and I always remember in class too, you were always you loved art. You were drawing, you were in the art, weren't you also in the art program? And
I did, well, I dabbled in a few art classes, but it was never an actual major. I wasn't part of the art program. I did really find a good love for photography during my 4 years at UAlbany. And so I ended up joining the student group that is called the University Photo Service. I was part of that group all of my 4 years, and that was more of a personal hobby at first, but I realized how that could be useful in journalism. And I think maybe somewhere down the line, I would love to really immerse myself into photojournalism. That is a personal goal of mine. But yeah, I really started to think about like how just, when you are packaging a story, images and visuals can be so powerful in really getting your message across. And so photos became more than just a hobby. I was trying to kind of like package all of my work together that way.
Right. And I guess that sort of brings up the whole idea of backpack journalism. You know, I remember we're all told that we have to be masters at all these different platforms, and it's quite impossible to be. It's like those 4-in-1 printers. They do everything kind of mediocre, but you have to be great at each because again, it's so competitive. So I was wondering in terms of, I guess because of these various platforms that are coming up, journalism is increasingly becoming this collaborative effort. Verification is a team effort. Putting together a multimedia package is a team effort. So I was wondering, you know, in your jobs, how are you, what are some of the qualities you're finding that you need in order to work as a team and put these packages together in a timely, robust way? I guess, John, you do a lot of collaborative work across different platforms at CBS?
Yes, we do. Actually, so my cameraman would kill me if I said this because they always say, stop thinking about this. Because I like to think I'm an MMJ, as they call it. I know you're saying backpack journalist, and that's what they called it a lot in college. But in the industry, I've noticed we call it MMJ, multimedia journalist. So before I got to CBS, I was at News 12 for 5 years, Colorado for 2 years before that. And then I was, like I mentioned, I was producing in Albany. But when I got my first job in Colorado, I shot, I wrote, I edited, I did everything. And then same thing with News 12, and then also I would anchor. And then in Colorado too, I would produce. There was a couple weekends I literally got in probably, I don't even know, 5 a.m. or so, and I was the assignment desk, I was the video editor, I was the cameraman, I was the reporter, I was the producer, then I anchored the entire show. So I did everything. It was only a couple of weekends. We were really short-staffed in the news industry, but I've never had to work that hard before in my life, only those couple of weekends of nonstop going news. But it just teaches you so much. And now, you know, now I'm in a role where I'm just now reporting. I have cameramen, I have editors and stuff like that. Fortunate to get to that position. I see the wave of the future of news changing significantly, and I think that that won't always be that way. And I will probably one day have to go back to my skill set. But yeah, it's being able to, even what I would say too, it's like when I shot for News 12, it was so much easier to put together stories when you know what you shot. So like nat sounds and natural sounds and stuff like that. Like I would look like a nerd, and I would always be listening as I was shooting everything, but I would always hear all the natural sounds, and I knew that's how I was going to start my story. Or, you know, even now when I'm with a cameraman, say the audio drops out and this person said something really great, I don't realize that. He might realize that, but then when I'm writing to that soundbite, and I don't realize that that audio dropped out. So that's kind of hurts you later on, especially with my deadlines. You know, I hear Christine talking about how sometimes she has like 2 months to write a piece or something. I have 20 minutes sometimes. You know, it's like right now the Mayor Bill de Blasio does his press conferences at 10 a.m. They never start at 10 a.m. They start at like 10:30. And then he gets good at like 11. And I have to get my story to my editor at 10:45. So for the noon, because I'm all morning. I'm live between 4:30 and 7 a.m. and then in the noon show as well. So for me, for work, you know, I get in at like 2:30, and it's a quick turnaround. So what I'm getting at is when you're able to do MMJ and do everything yourself, it's actually a lot easier, is what I'm finding it. I think that your pieces come out a lot better. And when you start adding too many cooks in the kitchen, it's difficult. But when you only have a half an hour sometimes to write something, you need as much help as possible.
Right. Yeah. Christine, what about you at your at Chief Investment Officer? Are you finding you're trying to put teams together more often to put projects out? Or?
Absolutely. And I admire John. My God, he only gets good at 11, and you have to file by.
I knew. No, I listen, and I admire you too. No, that was not dig at the 2 months. You guys put together so much like important pieces. You know, for broadcast, it's like a quick turnaround with news and stuff like that. But yeah, no, it's like sometimes I tell you, I don't even know how I put news out there. Sometimes I have like 10 minutes to write a package, like a minute and a half. And I know college students, sometimes you guys have like a week to like in a journalism class to put together a package. I literally sometimes have 10 minutes. It's crazy.
And I would say, Elaine, that's a very important skill set to have, to be able to listen to something, know the important points, and be able to turn something in 20 minutes. When I was covering town board meetings or county meetings, as you know, you kind of want to do that to develop your chops. Try to work for a daily outlet so that you get that pacing in your head and you can quickly turn something around. But that can also mean that you're attending a 6-hour meeting and turning a story within a half an hour after the meeting, right? So you want to line your ducks up before the meeting, talk to some of the key players, what's going to come up, what do you think is important, and then also listen with your own ears just in case they're trying to spin you. When I was working at a community newspaper, this one was owned by the New York Times in Florida. They, about 10 years ago, they sent us all out with cameras of our own. And that was kind of like a breakthrough for a community newspaper to do that. They wanted us to take videos with every story, right? So then maybe I should have learned how to edit a video. That would have been wonderful skill set on my behalf, but it wasn't something. I would love to have learned how to edit video and how to edit sound for podcasting.
Right.
That is also becoming part of the skill set, just being able to do basic editing, podcasting, building the team is important, because you want to play to your strengths. You want to know where your strengths are while learning new information that'll be valuable to that team, right? So at my brand now, we do events, we do daily news, we do in-depth stories, and we kind of each take up pieces of that, big ball of wax, and then we have very long research projects that we work on. So as managing editor, I kind of have to figure out what the most important things to spend time are on, and then kind of delegate, and then take big chunks of it myself, playing to my own strengths as well. So it's also important to ask your team, what do you love to do?
Right.
And allow that person to spend at least 2% of their time. That's not all that much, but at least that, in order to get your team invigorated and energized regularly. Even if 98% of what they do is grunt work, they gotta have that passion project.
Right. Great. Yeah, good point. And is there much room in your organization, and are you aware if other organizations have time now to train prospective reporters who may not have, let's say, video skills, but they're great researchers and they're great writers? Are outlets taking the time now to provide in-house training, or are you expected to walk in with a certain skill set to match an employer's needs?
I think the skill sets definitely add to the bundle, right? If you're a writer and you know SEO, that's definitely a selling point. If you know how to do podcasts, you can kind of carve yourself a niche as a younger graduate on the team who knows tech, who knows how to edit like this person doesn't, and that adds value. As far as training, of course you're not going to know everything. You're just starting out, so you have to figure out, first of all, as you search for a job, where you're going to get the training that you want. Sometimes smaller teams or smaller companies, they don't have a lot of time to train you. So you kind of have to figure that out. Like, get a feeling for it during the job interview. Is this person, how much hand-holding do you need? And is this person going to be able to do it? Or are you not a match? It's kind of like, dating. You're either a match or you're not. And do you have the time to learn by yourself? Will you be given the time? Will you be able to work late nights in order to figure out a new program or a new way of doing research? That is also important. So I think a lot of outlets, expect they're going to give you a large amount of time, and they're going to expect you to figure it out. But, after the honeymoon is over, your time might get shortened and a little bit more.
Right. Right. So Madeline, when you were at the at SUNY Albany at Albany Student Press, did you find that experience prepared you for the profession and gave you skills that you might not have gotten by just taking the classes at the university?
Yeah, I think definitely, I haven't really had to use this, but it's a good backup skill to have, like InDesign, Photoshop, things like that. That was definitely helpful. Also just kind of working on something that was collaborative, like management skills, even when we were trying to build up the staff and things like that. And I'd say also, I did a lot of internships throughout my college years, and so I was at the Times Union for an internship, and I worked like the morning desk, and that was good for learning sort of how breaking news worked. And then I also worked for the Associated Press my final semester as a strainer at the Capitol, and that was good for literally going to 6-hour meetings or legislative hearings. And then because it was Associated Press, they were like, write 300 words and no more on this. And it's like, I don't know what to do. So those were good learning experiences. I think it's sort of hard to learn how to be a reporter in a classroom. I feel like in terms of my interviewing skills and picking out what was important for a story, that just comes with doing it over and over again. So whether that's through getting a lot of class assignments or doing internships or working for the ASP, that's really the only way to learn that kind of thing, because it's sort of like you begin to like realize like you can feel it when you see it, when you hear it, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a little bit like riding a bicycle. Like once you know how to ride a bicycle, you just never forget. You'll be riding a inverted pyramid when you're 90.
Yeah.
I mean, would a student be able to get a job in a newsroom if they don't have a portfolio to show? I mean, coming out of college, I mean, I always remember being told you have to have clips and you got to build up a package in order to give to someone when you walk into a newsroom. I mean, how important is that package still?
I would say it's probably extremely important. When I came to UAlbany, I had switched my major, so I didn't really have any journalism experience. And the only reason I got an internship in the spring was because of a professor, because I didn't really have news clips. I had like my past life interest clips from when I wanted to do PR or something. So I didn't have a lot to show the people at the TU, but they had a recommendation for me. And so it was just pure luck. And if I hadn't done that and worked at the ASP and gotten clips other ways for when I went out into the real world to try to get a job, I wouldn't have, because myself and my friends I went to school with who studied journalism too, like you apply to dozens and dozens and dozens of jobs and you hear back from like 5.
Wow.
So you definitely need to build a portfolio. And if you can get like data or programming skills or something to differentiate yourself, that's a huge plus.
Right. Yeah. It's tough out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess I'd like to switch topics a little bit to social media, which, you know, has already dramatically reshaped how we get news, how we produce news, how we distribute it, and how we consume it. And so I was wondering how does how do you incorporate social media into your work, or how has social media impacted your job or your profession now? Sabrina, does that affect you much in PR, the social media angle?
I mean, we can definitely all agree, like PR, I mean, social media has such a strong pull on just the general public's like opinion on things. People's trust has really depleted, I guess, maybe over the last few years, because there's just so much information on social media that it's like so oversaturated. And there are a lot of people also who can't differentiate as to what is true and from a credible source and what isn't. And I guess, you know, the way that can tie into PR is typically like if we just need to clarify someone's stance or obviously what the truth is in any, you know, situation or any client's case. I think social media plays a good role in like your audience's image of you know, the messages that you are trying to clarify or highlight. But I think that it has only gotten harder with just like how complex social media communities have gotten.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess do you actively monitor social media to see how it might impact what you're doing at the moment for a PR company, or do you have someone who does that, or do they tend to just kind of come across your desk?
So in my role, I do have to wear many hats. So I do both monitor and manage a number of social media accounts for a number of clients. And it's not only monitoring their, you know, like their comment section, for example, but it's also monitoring the general conversation in any topics that are related or pertinent to our client's niche.
Right.
And so, you know, it is a lot of work, definitely, to kind of filter through everything. But it's important to, you know, be observant of the general or the overall story or angle that a lot of people have of the perception of who you are working for in PR.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, John, with you too, I mean, what are the rules around your social media output? I mean, does CBS have certain rules of the do's and don'ts and how you present yourself? You know.
Yeah. You know, they want us to tweet as much as possible. I'm terrible at Twitter. I'm better at Facebook and Instagram, but then now with this, you know, Snapchat and TikTok and all this, I can't keep up. I'm 32 and I'm the worst millennial. Like there's so much social media out there that I'm just like, I don't know how to handle any of this. So I try, and it is important. It is vital. They're trying to have us do all these TikTok videos now, and I don't get it yet. I sound like a dinosaur, but I just don't understand it yet. But yeah, no, it's like, I think for me, for my job, for, I guess I should say, even just my hours, social media is important because often or not, you know, again, I keep talking about my hours, but I'm in at work at 2:30 in the morning, on TV by 4:30. So sometimes, or often or not, if we need a statement from someone, we could take a tweet from them, and we kind of use that as a way of having their information, you know, with them just passing legalizing marijuana here in the state of New York. We had to get the Republican side of it too. All the Democrats are all happy about it and stuff like that. Most Democrats, I should say, but then the Republicans were not. So we went on the social media pages to find what people are tweeting about, what they're saying, and that kind of serves as a statement until we could get them to go on camera, just because of the hours. And then by like the noon show and the 5 and 6 o'clock, we could get those interviews. So social media works good for us in that way too. I'd also say social media is great for story ideas too. I don't know if you guys also have seen this. A lot of Facebook groups, there's mom groups and dad groups and just these small little towns, and they go on and they complain about these things, and we're allowed to be a part of it. We see what they're saying, and that's how we get a lot of our story ideas, is on social media. You know, all those people, I can't stand some people's comments, what they say. Even, they're just so nasty sometimes. People write like, I hate his tie, you know, he needs to get a haircut. Like, it's just ridiculous stuff. But then often sometimes people will complain about something on social media, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good point, and then you try and work off of that too. So you do get people's ideas and opinions off of it as well.
Right. And do you have rules as to how you can present yourself on social media with
No,
CBS?
we don't. I think they just kind of trust us not to go too crazy. You know, they've never told me what to post, what not to post. they like us getting personal, not too personal. You know what I mean? Like if I go away with my fiance, I'll post a photo of the two of us or with our dogs. I was just actually on a vacation with my mom. Her and I took a mother-son trip, and they posted a picture with her and I. It's like we went to Cape May, New Jersey because of the pandemic, and if I left the tri-state area, I'd have to quarantine. So we just went down there, but people loved that, and like my bosses even saw it and like, oh, that's great. And so they like that, and then having a little bit of both, having your news and then also your personal life. So when people watch you on TV, or in your case too, read about you guys and stuff like that, read what you guys are writing, they kind of feel like they know that person and they trust that person a little bit more.
Right.
So when you show that personal side.
So in a way, you're working all the time.
That's really annoying. So when people, a lot of my friends are in the news industry, so they kind of get it. My best friend Pat, he's a senior producer at CNBC, and him and I both have 2 phones. And so when we go out to dinner with my friends or whatnot, we often do the whole put your phones in the middle of the table so no one goes on their phone. And Pat and I always take out both of our phones, and they always make fun of us, but like we're always working. It's annoying, but when you love it, it's not. I tell you, again, I wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning to go to work, and I wake up with a smile on my face. It sounds so pathetic, but I love my job, and I worked so hard to get to my job that I'm happy with it. So if I'm working and I'm tweeting and doing this and doing that, I still love it. I'm not annoyed by it at all. And it takes 2 seconds. There's breaking news. Often than not, I'm taking it from The Wire, or I'm taking it from, an email from one of the other reporters are saying, and you're attributing the source, and you tweet it out, and you're informing everyone. And then, I don't know, I go back to watching Game of Thrones. Like, it's really not that serious.
Right. I was just sort of thinking, I was watching The Post the other day, and there's a scene where Ben Bradley, it's like the most stressful moment in the movie, and they're all stressed out and racing all over the place. And Tom Hanks playing Ben Bradley, he takes a moment, the camera focuses on him, and he goes, "This is fun."
It's true though.
And I was like, okay, yeah, it's true. And I was like, but why? Like, it's really stressful. Like, what is it about this profession that it is fun? Like,
we're all adrenaline junkies, and that's the one thing that I feel like I always want to tell potential journalists, kids going to school for journalism, is I hope you like the adrenaline, especially when you're on TV. I've been doing this, again, I'm 32. I've been doing this for almost 10 years now. I can't even tell you how many live shots I've done, and I still get the adrenaline, the rush, and having all these eyeballs on you. It's fun. It's like this, I hate heights, so I'm not this adrenaline junkie who wants to go on a roller coaster or do something like that. I like to go on television, and it's just fun. I mean, some of the best like you go to breaking news when no one is dead or something like that, and then that's just terrible. I can't even tell you how many often I literally want to cry at a story I'm covering, but it's just fun going there, and the chaos, and I don't know what it is. It's interesting. And it's one of my first news directors says it's a privilege, and it's true. It's like, it's a privilege to be in this scenario and in this situation where often or not, most people are not there. They're not seeing that. And you get to see all that firsthand and then convey it to the masses of what's going on.
Right. Yeah. Christine, so you're nodding your head quite vigorously.
When I first started, I was actually in a writing group out in the Hamptons, and I wanted to keep writing on my book. So I needed a day job. And one of the women in the group said, there's a woman trying to start a magazine called Networking. You should go knock on her door and see if she needs an employee. So I did. And the woman answered the door. She said, "Can you typeset?" Now, I thought she literally meant like setting type with lead or, something, because that little newspaper I worked for in my town was actually still setting lead.
Oh,
so I have no idea how to typeset, but she meant working on a computer, typing up press releases. And I said, I can learn. So because I said I could learn, all of a sudden I got a press pass, and that gave me a front row seat to such amazing things. I was covering the United Nations in my 20s. I was learning about the Taliban before anybody knew what the Taliban were. I was interviewing or writing about women who got hit by cables while they were wearing the burqa. And it's just like my world just popped open in an international way immediately upon this tiny little newspaper job. It was a magazine at the time. It paid $287 a week. And it included fetching, dry cleaning, kind of like the Devil Wears Prada stuff, sorting press releases. But it opened my world. I got to interview Gloria Steinem and ask her questions about feminism and all of that stuff. Just like John said, it was such a privilege. I mean, here I was in my 20s, and my only qualification was that I could write and that I was a go-getter. And, and that made all the difference.
Right.
But, and of course, being accurate. So
right.
Press pass, front row seat to life, to history in the making.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt, but there was it was actually a college graduation gift. My next door neighbor got me a business card, and I always say this, but I forget who, you guys probably know who said it, but journalism is the first rough draft of history. And it's phenomenal quote because it's so true. It's like especially during this pandemic, we're covering all this stuff that's historical and symbolic, and we're writing about it and we're reporting about it. And it's just such a privilege.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And also just Christine, what you were saying too, it's the kind of job where you learn something you learn something new every day. But also I think it might be true for Sabrina, what you're doing, and Madeline, what you're doing as well. I mean, you're both working on different kinds of campaigns, and are you finding that in your job that, one day you might be learning about tourism, and Madeline, sometimes you're doing, you're gathering data for the union in Washington. Are you finding yourself every day is kind of a new discovery for you in PR? And
I mean, sorry. Oh, I had to make sure I wasn't on mute. I would say so, honestly. Like, I definitely agree with John. Like, I think the environments that you're put in journalism and PR, like, it is always changing. It's equally as fast paced. But truthfully, like, for me personally, I find that is what keeps it so interesting. Like, I am never bored at my job. I love being able to figure out exactly what points of information I need to pick and pull from a press release that I'm putting together, or whether if it's a press conference that just happened. I know which points are going to make perfect headlines. And it is exciting that you play a role in at least shaping how that message is going to be distributed. And I feel obviously that's just more of journalism's role as a whole. Like, that's why we value it so much. You are really crafting like everyone's perspective as to how they're going to receive any kind of information. But in PR, I find that it is just as exciting, being there when the action is happening, and always being part, in my experience personally, I'm always part of like a media group or something. If there's like a row of photojournalists, I'm capturing the photos as well, just to make sure that we can, put things together with our press conference or our media alert that we're about to send out minutes after any type of event happens for one of our clients. So yeah, I mean, I think it is, it's very fast paced, but it is very interesting because of that.
Right. Yes. So, and Matt, I'm not quite sure how much more time we have left. Madeline, I'm just curious. I'm actually not fully clear. You kind of have a new job.
Yeah.
New job now.
I
right?
started in January, so
Okay.
it's pretty new. But I started, so at my last publication, I worked for a place called Inside Higher Ed, which is a trade publication focusing on higher education, covering that nationwide, a little bit internationally. And we formed a union there. We went public on May 1st, and during the start of the pandemic. And through that, I was, helping organize that. Then I became the chair of our union, basically the head of it, going into bargaining. And I started working with the News Guild, which unionizes newspapers and also communication workers and different things across the country, and was doing volunteer and then paid work with them, which was, great, talking to people who just want to work with their coworkers to improve the conditions in a lot of newsrooms and a lot of places across the journalism industry. And so I had always, had a lot of passion for social justice and things like that, and realized that I wanted to sort of put my skills and target my efforts through union work. And so I went looking for a union job. So now I work for an AFSCME local in just outside of DC, where I get to, use some of the skills I learned as a journalist, like data and some programming stuff, and then also use communication skills to communicate with members, to send out press releases, to do things like that. And it's, a lot of crossover, especially because one of the best parts I think about being a reporter is you learn how to talk to people, and you learn how to ask questions, and you also learn how to listen, like the most important part. And if you're good at doing that, then you can really go, not anywhere, but it can take you far in a lot of different jobs, a lot of different roles, and a lot of different industries. With labor, for instance, like when you're having organizing conversations, you're listening like 80% of the time at least. And so you have to be able to do that. And it's the same when you're a reporter. So there's a lot of crossover there.
Right. And I think we do tend to sometimes just, overlook the idea that, on some levels, journalism is really actually quite basic. I think we can get lost in this pressure to learn all these different technologies. And yes, we do have to learn them, but it really just comes down to listening to people, taking good notes, following up on their answers, and like Christine said too, being accurate and telling a good story while you're at it. So I think Melissa Samuels said that she was going to try to open this up for questions. If anyone has specific questions for John, Madeline, and Sabrina and Christine, you're sending them through the chat, right? Or asking out loud. If you don't want to, talk out loud, you can send them through the chat.
I also just wanted to add that it's our responsibility as journalists to add context to what people are seeing. So many people are recording on their cell phones and Instagram, and and just kind of giving us perspectives that they have. But it comes down to the journalist to kind of bundle it, to get a few different sides of a story, to talk about how the crowds reacted after, George Floyd was murdered, and what the reaction of the police were after that cell phone was turned off. It's up to the journalist to observe that in a way that others don't. And that that is an important mantle of responsibility on your shoulders.
It's sort of what they say as, our job is to make sense of the news, not just to report it, but to try to give it historical context or significance in terms of what else may have come recently. So does anyone have any questions? I think Max, I saw you raise your hand up. And
yeah, I have a question, but you can answer the ones in the chat first if you want to.
No, feel free.
Because there are two people.
I have to admit, I have trouble. I must be old. No one asked me to learn a new technology, but I have trouble looking at chat and coming up with questions and looking at everyone on the screen. So if you have a question directly for someone, please feel free to ask it.
Yeah. So, I guess they could go to anyone, but, with COVID, there's a lot of changes on how, with everything really. And I was just wondering if you think any of those changes and what are the changes that are going to stick after COVID? So I guess how journalism might evolve after COVID might be a.
Actually, good question. Does anybody want to tackle that? John, has your job changed much since
Yeah,
COVID?
so I'll tackle it. How it's changed so it's like, when I go on TV, I wear the mask on television, and that comes with a lot of politics behind it, anti-maskers and politics and just everything. Once they tell me it's safe to take it off, I will clearly take it off. But what we are also doing is, for my job, we social distance. And so usually you go with a cameraman and you drive around, but I've been driving separately. So the company gave me a car, which is good because actually they pay for the commute, so it's saving me money. But once COVID's over, we'll probably go back together and we'll start driving again. But I think in terms of Zooms, we always, my news director, he is leaving, and there's some troubles with my news director. My boss is currently, I think he might be getting fired. But my former news director hated Skype interviews, hated it. And it was a nightmare sometimes because we're based in Midtown Manhattan on the West Side, and we still cover New Jersey, we cover Connecticut, we cover Westchester, Long Island, we cover a very large area. We'd have to drive all the way to Long Island to do an interview, or all the way to South Jersey, or all the way to Connecticut. He could, because he wanted that. Now we're all starting to see that Zoom's interviews and all this different stuff is just as good as in-person ones. Of course, you want to go to an event and go to what's going on in demonstration and seeing it for visuals. But I think when we're trying to interview an expert or something like that to get more insight, a Zoom interview is going to be just as good as an in-person interview. And that's going to help all of us. You hear me talk about my deadlines. It's going to help my deadline, my anxiety like crazy, knowing I have to drive to South Jersey and then head to Long Island for this protest and try and squeeze it all in for a package for a noon show. So that's going to really help in the future.
Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa Samuels from the UAlbany Alumni Association. I helped put together tonight's program, and I'm just going to hop on and help with the questions in the chat.
Help the moderator who can't multitask.
There you go. It is hard to do a lot of things all at once. So here's a question. I'll throw it out, and then maybe one of our panelists can jump in. What's the best way to start your journalism career while in or freshly out of college?
As soon as you can. You don't have to wait for college. You can start it as a teenager, but really start to create your clip reel, your portfolio, your social media presence, and your YouTube presence as soon as you can.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, I got an internship while in college, and then I was full-time producing and at college, and I started in high school in radio. So, and I also see one of these other questions about having a journalism degree, if you actually need the journalism degree. Sorry, I don't know, Melissa, if I'm getting ahead.
No, that's okay. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Yes, I think get as quickly started as quickly as possible with internships. 100%. Don't slack on internships, but also you do need a degree. That's from what I've seen in all my jobs, everyone's has had a degree. It might not necessarily have to be in journalism, but having your bachelor's degree is very important from what I've seen. And then also getting experience. Again, it does not have to be in journalism. People have it in many other things, but I know my company is not going to hire someone without a bachelor's degree. A lot of people have their master's too.
And I guess, could I just point out too, for the student who asked that question is, we have three journalism organizations on campus, and you don't have to be a journalism major to join. You can join the Ask today, you can join Albany TV today, and you can join the radio station. And there are students there who will train you, and there are faculty who are willing to help you get trained as well. We really believe in this profession, so we want students to graduate interested in getting into the field.
If I can add one last point, I feel like this kind of touched on maybe two questions, but I think maybe one of the best ways to really thrive in your career is just like figuring out your niche, like Christine had said, what your passion is. For me, that was a photography, and I found a way to intertwine that with my journalism related work. But we go through so many different courses in the journalism department. We do broadcast and desktop publishing, actual press writing and things like that. I'm sorry, my fire alarm is going off. But I think that the reason we take like such a wide variety of courses is because there really are so many different routes to take. And it is good to have experience in everything. I didn't figure out what I liked until I actually got to try a little bit of everything. But once you figure out what you're good at, really just stick with it, even if it is like some kind of a side hobby, just any passion that you might have. Like, you never know where you'll be able to integrate that into your professional work along the way. When I had interned during my senior year, I interned at my current firm, and I was one of 5 interns, all from UAlbany. But I was the only one that ended up getting hired because I had a background in photography and there was a need for that. So partially luck and partially, because I really made sure to highlight my strengths above the fact that I had never had public relations experience.
Here's some related question. One student is asking, do you necessarily need to have a specialty before you graduate?
I don't know if I would say that that it is required to have, but I mean, we all know what we like and what we don't like, even if it's just the 5 or 6 classes that we're taking.
Oh, I think you froze.
Towards really focusing on that is going to be helpful. Oh, I'm sorry. I just briefly, I think just figuring out where you are liking your work and yourself to be is going to be helpful in figuring out what you can highlight once you're getting into the workforce post-graduation.
Yeah, I definitely don't think you need a specialty. Like, people often ask me, like, what do you cover? I'm general assignment. I cover anything and everything. So I don't think you need a specialty. I think you should know what realm of journalism you want to go into, whether it's a broadcast, whether it's, a more print or what have you, or radio or something like that, whatever it is, that you might have to kind of figure out a little bit more, but you can always change your mind too. I know a lot of people. I know one person, his name is Kevin Rocone, actually. He is a freelancer for both CBS radio and for broadcast. He does both, and he doesn't know what he likes more, and so he's been doing both. So I guess then there you go. Yeah, too. So you don't even need a specialty in that. You just kind of have to know what you want. I think though, in which direction to go in first, I would feel like to say.
Well, Christine, you weren't always in finance, were you? In finance writing, and look at you now, you're running a specialty brand for chief investment officers.
Yes, and it's funny. You can develop your niche as you go along. At the time that I took this on, it was kind of during the Great Recession, and journalism was shrinking, and business journalism seems like there's always going to be a job there, because people are always concerned about the markets, right? So if you're looking for an in, and you're kind of baffled about journalism and you're reading all the news about layoffs, I would say develop a bit of a specialty in business journalism. I had an editor say, even become an accountant and then become a business journalist. Sometimes it's good to hone that skill set. But I think, John, I see a lot of questions for you about internships and things like that. I just want to plug LinkedIn for me, for my career. That was very important to get a major clip onto LinkedIn and kind of network through that site, asking editors for coffee dates, or on Zoom. Everybody kind of gets more intimate. That's really cool about this kind of virus environment.
You have a couple of questions from students about the best way to network to get their work and themselves out there. Social media, LinkedIn, What do you recommend for college students in terms of making some good connections?
For me,
I think the whole group can answer this question.
well, I'm sorry, I see this one question, John, where did you intern in college?
Yeah, there was a
Yeah.
specific question about.
That one I can answer easily. The state assembly, I did that junior year for Assemblyman Bing, who's no longer a assemblyman anymore. That was a full-time internship, again, junior year. And then senior year, I interned at the ABC affiliate in Albany, News 10. I think it was News 10 when I worked there. I don't follow it anymore. I think they joined forces with another news organization up there, but I'm pretty sure it's still News 10. So those are the two internships that I did.
How did you get them?
The first one I applied to, so I was a poli-sci minor, journalism and comm double major. And so I applied to the first assembly job. And then the second one, I was in the Communication Honor Society, and they had a internship event, and the news director was there, and I came with my resume and I said I was really interested in journalism. I didn't know really what path I wanted to go. And she said, "You're going into news, you're going to go on television, give me your resume, we're going to get you an internship." And that's how I got the internship. And then I just worked my way up from there. It was literally a Communication Honor Society internship fair.
Nice.
Yeah, you really never do know. Any of our other panelists want to talk a little bit about their suggestions in terms of how to network as a student?
I would say joining various journalism organizations. I didn't do a ton of it in college, but as a reporter, and especially at my previous job, going to conferences or to trainings was a really great way to network, I found. Like the Investigative Reporters and Editors organization, that's a great one. They also have really good trainings too, and you'll meet reporters from all over the country, whether they're in print or TV or broadcast, and it'll be people from small outlets or people from larger outlets. So it's a really great way to meet people. And then, if there's any conferences or events, I know when, with the ASP, we had, this is sort of something we did. We had like an anniversary gala thing, and we met people that way. And then also through going to sort of different events through the Albany Student Press work. Also, we met student journalists and sometimes people who were adult journalists, I guess, or full-time journalists.
We have a question. What classes did you all find really useful? Maybe didn't at the time, but now look back and think that was really great. That really helped me get where I needed to be.
I'll start off. I wish I could remember the exact name of the class, but one professor that I think taught me what ended up being some of the most valuable skills was Professor Palmer. I took a class of his my sophomore year. I took a few classes of his, but one class in particular where we learned how to use Final Cut Pro for video editing. We learned how to design websites, I believe. A lot of like digital media focus in that classroom. And of course, it was all pertaining to journalism and how to, really put your whole story together with different mixed media elements. But one of his classes really ended up being the most beneficial for me because I felt myself leaning towards more of like a digital media and just visuals in general type of direction.
I took a political communication class, and I think that was one of the best ones. But again, I was double major. I was communication and journalism, so I'm not too sure if that was the communication department or journalism. You may be able to take that as well. But political comm was one of the most interesting classes I have taken.
Christine, do you have a class that stands out for you?
I have kind of a weird answer to that. When I was in college, I needed a part-time job, and I applied for the SUNY Alumni Association as a telemarketer. and it was my job to kind of call graduates of the university to give money. Now, if there's anything that's awkward, it's asking complete strangers on cold calls to give you, and you had to start at $1,000.
Oh, wow.
So it kind of trained me to cold call, to call up strangers on the street and ask them for stuff they didn't want to give me. And I wound up winning the top pledge award just randomly. I can't say I was completely skilled there, but it kind of trained me in the art of presentation, voice, personality, and how to keep people engaged on a phone, you know, when they're obviously going to be uncomfortable. And as far as my training is concerned, I'm going to admit this. I was an English major. So I took a lot of writing courses, and then kind of learned my craft on the street.
I think it goes back to practicing, you know, whatever you learn in your classes, start practicing. I mean, book knowledge is not enough. You have to go out and do, you know, journalism is a verb, like is what it comes down to. And to read as much as you can at the same time, because it is about skills and it's also about what you know and then who you know.
I wish I had taken more digital and data journalism. I wish I had. I think that
data journalism is also just, it's a whole new, it's obviously another growing channel of journalism, but that you can do so much with data and you can tell a story with different kinds of graphs, and it's a whole nother audience that is still untapped, I think. Anyone else have questions about journalism or?
We have a couple still in the chat, Lainey. There's David asks, I have an article I've written pertaining to the university. I'm unsure who to bring it to or how to get it out there.
Oh, I've hooked him up with Megan Brink already.
Oh, you've already hooked him up? Yes. Well, okay.
There's emails.
All right, I think we had one more. Do you think COVID has highlighted the importance of science journalism?
That can go both ways, because like we said, so many people are so untrusting, and so many people don't know which sources to trust. I don't know, I feel like someone else could probably speak on this better, but my immediate answer is I don't know.
Yeah, I think for broadcasts, for us, we tell stories in a minute and a half. I think for print journalism, it might be a little bit different because you could really deep dive into these kind of stories with science reporting and, magazine writing and stuff like that for science publications. For us, for general assignment local news, yes, I do think that, it will change and we will look a little bit more into these kind of things. And I think this whole pandemic's just opened up all of our eyes to what's important, just at home too in general, but yeah, in science too. I mean, I hope so. I don't think that we have been taking it as serious as possible, everything that's going on, climate change and stuff like that. So it's something that's, for me, I'm very close to it. I feel for it and I read up on it, but I don't think other people, members of society, may believe it as much. So I think that might be the hard time. We might be able to report about it, but the trust there might not be there because people just don't like to believe, or trust in what they don't feel like is right, even though it is. And that's where fake news comes in, is just because you don't believe in it doesn't mean it's fake. And with science reporting, that's a whole different realm, because it's theory-based, writing and journalism instead of really source-based.
Here's I think maybe we have time for one last question, and this one kind of relates to trust, as you just mentioned, John. Christian says, does being politically active or opinionated outside of writing, I'm a leftist, pose risks of not being a trusted news writer by readers? So balancing sort of your personal beliefs with your professional responsibility as a writer.
I would say if you want to work for a newspaper or a place that does hard news and not an advocacy publication or something like that. Yes, so you can't like go to Twitter and and post different things that you might feel. You can't get in arguments with your sources on Twitter. You can't, well, to a degree, you can't tell a source who you're going to vote for, technically, by like the ethical rules. That doesn't mean you can't be active in some ways. I mean, there's some ways you can be active in some organizations without publicizing it, essentially. So doing good work and sort of doing it on the down low kind of thing. And a bonus about forming, if you form a union with your newsroom, or if you go to a unionized newsroom, is then you can be pro unions because you're part of a union. So everyone already knows that. That's another one of the many positives of that. But I would say none of the places I work for, if I tweeted something like, I hate Trump or something like that wouldn't have gone well.
Yeah, there's this guy Blake McCoy who's anchor for the Fox affiliate in Washington D.C. and he was suspended for a lot of things, but one of them being he tweeted out about obese people getting the vaccine before he could get the vaccine. I don't know if you guys saw any of that, and it's suspended, and rightly so. He should be suspended over that. Those are things we cannot do or say. And what you just said, Madeline, too. Like I can't tweet Trump is an idiot or I love Trump or anything like that. My bosses, that's something that they would shut down right away.
And I knew an editor. He was a fantastic editor. He worked for a paper that was owned by the New York Times Company, and they found out he was too politically active, and they demoted him. They kind of they put him in the job of basically an intern for months, just to kind of prove their point. So, I mean, you can carve out a niche as a leftist or a rightist. Obviously, you can blog, you can go on YouTube and gather millions of followers. But like they said, if you're going to kind of express a strong opinion, remember that you're supposed to be subjective as a journalist. You're not supposed to have an opinion there.
Mhm.
Or we're supposed to be independent and
objective.
I know. It's getting late.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, but there is room for opinion, and that's in the opinion section. But even if you write for the opinion section in a trusted news outlet, you're not supposed to have party affiliation. You're still supposed to be independent of what you're writing about, but you can have views. It's sort of goes at the heart of what journalism is. You verify, you're independent, and you're accountable. Not many other professions have all those three attributes to it, which makes this a challenging job to have, but a fun one too, I think, as we've established. Anyway, so I think it's getting 8:20, time to, well, thanks John, and thanks Christine and Sabrina and Madeline. It's nice meeting you and seeing you again too. And John's past your bedtime, so.
It is way past. I'm usually in bed an hour and a half ago.
Sorry. We'll be thinking of you as you hop onto the car and head to New York at 1 a.m.
I'm going to go take a nap before I have to go on television. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for coming, all of you. And thank you, Melissa, for setting this up.
My pleasure. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
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 That's kind of hard. I don't think I like being a moderator.
You did great.
Hey, you did a great job, Blaney.
No,
I thought you were great.
but it's like I can't even look at the chat and talk to someone at the same time. Like, oh my God, there's all
You
this.
kept coming back with the questions and the comments, and just like a reporter. I mean, you've got it.
Well, Thomas, we're gonna cut and paste all those. Take Thomas Palmer's class, and we'll send it to the dean, right?
Okay. Yeah, we did it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would have been much easier.
Look, that was really nice, of Sabrina. I'll have to thank her. And believe me, I didn't pay her off to say that. You're probably wondering, hey, did he slip her a little bit of cash or something? No, I didn't. But no, that was nice, for that to be recognized. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly was. Yeah, like, I'm sorry, if the students had just asked the questions out loud, but I think once we gave them the option to go into the chat, then that's what they chose to do. So if they'd asked them out loud, it would have been easy for you without having to look at the chat. So I'm sorry if I was supposed to jump into the chat.
No,
I didn't remember that, but I forgot at some point that would be helpful. So
Okay. No, I noticed that in the classrooms too. It's like you ask a question, everyone's dead silence. I'm like, put it in the chat. And then suddenly it was like, boom.
yeah, it's funny. This generation is so not comfortable talking to people. Like, God forbid they should have to pick up the phone and call someone, so I guess we shouldn't be surprised that they prefer the chat, but so we had such a nice turnout. I mean, we had more students than had registered. That never happens. I mean, never. Usually it's like 50%. So I think, thanks up all the outreach you did today must have really made a difference. And we had more students than registered, so students must have been sharing.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you for, yeah.
Great.
That was great.
it was. It was a good time. I had trouble getting on at first. I had some network difficulties, but I finally got in. So somebody let me in, I think, and it worked.
That was me.
Oh,
I let you in.
Thank you so very much.
Can I just mention while you're here, look at the Albany Student Press. They're really kicking butt this semester, and they have those great. I was telling Melissa earlier the stories, and down the road they're going to need some like a quick copyright tutorial workshop, because that came up on this story.
I can do that. That's one of my scholarly areas. I'm up to date. I just finished with a meeting with Hearst Council in New York, and I mean, I've got pretty much I'm knowledgeable about some of the latest trends, and I love hypotheticals. I love to get hypotheticals and get students winding those up.
They had a point where there's one of the president-elect of the SA is accused of all these accusations. It was on his political campaign platform on Instagram, which also happens to be his personal Instagram account, but he's using it for political reasons. So they took his picture from that and used it in the story. And he said, "You can't do that. I want to be in charge of what photo you use." And we were trying to just make sure that the ASP actually did have the copyright to use this photo, because it's for political campaigning. And suddenly I was like, boy, we all need a little more of a lesson.
You know what? Do you want to set up? If you set up a Zoom time, I could spend about an hour. I could probably get the heart of it nailed down in an hour, and then questions. But I would at least need an hour to go through some of the fundamentals of fair use. I can also talk about court cases. Surprises. There have been surprises in courts because judges, by and large, it's copyright is always fought at the federal level. But what happens, you'll also have judges. Some of them are more media literate than others. Now, they're legally literate, but then you can wind up with a case. Let's say if a work is transformative enough, sometimes that will protect you with fair use, and then it depends on the judges. And so it's really crazy. Yeah.
I think what they need is, Melissa, they're trying to be a club, the Albany Student Press. They've always been independent, but they fell apart last semester, and they've struggled ever since Madeline has been at it. They've just really been struggling ever since she left. They're not a student club, so they are exposed right now, each and every one as individuals, to a lawsuit.
They are.
Or copyright.
They absolutely.
Wow, I had never considered that.
No, and I want to make sure that they're protected and they err on the side of caution until they become a club. Once they're a club, the school will protect them.
Right. I had not thought of that.
No, I know. And doesn't mean like once they're protected, they can do anything, but
right.
I think they need an education quick.
Does being a club create any issues in terms of Do they have any restrictions if they're a club? Do they have to, does it quiet their voices in any way?
No, we looked into that. It doesn't, because the club is supposed to fulfill its mission and its purpose. So if the student association would try to clamp down on the Albany Student Press, where the Albany Student Press would be getting its money because it's a club,
Right.
they could go to student involvement and say, hey, they're crossing their line, and kick them
Gotcha.
out. There's ways around it.
Right.
But they need the infrastructure of the university just to survive.
Right.
And you know what's useful is you've got, sometimes it depends on the personnel in the administration or people close to the administration, like Jordan Carleo Evangelist, influential. Well, he's a former reporter at the Times Union.
Right.
And he of anybody at that level has a keen understanding of where those lines are and how much a student organization would need protection. Now, that's as good as long as he's there. I'm just saying that you can have some more confidence when you've got someone like that, and who has that type of background, because those would be some of the concerns. But anyway, Eleni, I'd be happy to set up a time and explain fair use and go over a range of cases, the types of questions they need to ask, depending on the content. I've had my head in this part of it for more than 15 years.
That'd be great. Yeah.
I'll email you, just maybe,
Yeah, folks, I'm going to hop off as well. If you want to stay on, I can make somebody the host for the meeting, because I think once I leave, it may go away.
No,
You guys good to go as well? Okay,
I've got 40 papers to finish grading, so I better go.
Okay.
I just have a kid to call, but other than that, no, it was a pleasure. Thank
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank
Lenny.
you
Guys,
very
have a
much
great
for
night. Yep.
Good night.
moderating.
Bye, Tom.
Cheers.
bye.